Hello fishing friends, this is Matthew with Outfishing 13 bringing you another Zebco reel service and repair video. Now if you enjoy this video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up. I hit 1,000 subscribers and that's really great because now I can make a little bit of revenue. It's not very much, but I might make a couple bucks a day. And every penny counts when it comes to making a little bit of revenue to keep your hobby going. So give me a big thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to my channel. Giving me a big thumbs up is really going to help promote my videos. So what I'm going to talk about today is a couple of problems that you may be experiencing with your Zebco Bullet. So let's get started and I'll explain the problems and how to prevent them and how to fix them. Okay, I have two Zebco Bullets here. This is mine that I got for a gift on a Christmas a couple years ago. Put it on my wish list and Santa brought it to me. I haven't used it a whole lot. I've probably put maybe 30 to 50 hours, maybe 100 hours of fishing on it, but not a ton. It's still in really great shape and everything works on it really well. Okay, this one I bought from a fisherman that loves the Zebcos, but he started using bait casters. And I can tell that he used these reels a lot, and he loved them. But let me show you what the wear and tear on this and some of the problems that I see that I got. Now, I got a really great deal on this, so I don't mind buying some parts for it and getting it all back into tip-top 100% shape. So let me explain what's going on. There's a couple things that you should be aware of. One, with a lot of use, you're going to wear out this button right here. You can see that this rubber button that's a shielded that shields everything from any water, and it's nice and comfortable, has worn out right there. Now that's not something that you can actually prevent, but that's a maintenance issue that we're going to have to address. I've ordered a part for it. When I get it, I'll show you a video on how to replace it. Also down here where it flexes all the time, every time you cock it, it's also worn a little hole right there. So these are generally, to replace this, probably about $8 worth of parts. That would include shipping. And it's actually fairly simple to replace. Okay. Then the other thing I want to show you on this, and we're going to talk about this and how you can prevent that, it's cocked, is the spinner cone. So we're going to take the front off here, the front cone, and look at the spinner head assembly. So here's the spinner head assembly on a Bullet. It has two ball bearing pickups here. And it doesn't have a chrome plated spinner head here. I'm not exactly sure what kind of plating they put on it, or if that's just, it could be some kind of anodization that's over the stainless steel, and the stainless steel itself is what prevents the wear on there. But here's one of the things I noticed when I got it. As you can see right here, on either side, right next to the pickup pins, is a little groove. Right there. Okay. That little groove happened because the previous owner was using braided line. The thing about braided line and you're fishing in muddy water is it gets wet. That mud is basically, it ends up being a very fine abrasive, and it gets embedded into your line and your line becomes like super fine sandpaper, okay? And so thousands of casts later, it's going to wear some little grooves in there. Now I sent an email to Zebco and asked them about this. I asked them what kind of coating is on here, because some of the older ones that are made of steel, and this one is well, have a chrome plating on it. Now chrome is super hard and it doesn't scratch very well. easily, and it's super abrasive resistant, highly abrasive resistant. They use chrome on the inside of two-stroke motor cylinders so that it doesn't wear, they don't wear the inside of the cylinder out. So it's super tough. I asked them, is this some kind of titanium nitride, which is super abrasive resistant too, and can be treated on metal? But they didn't answer my question. Maybe it's a trade secret and they don't want to say. Anyways, both sides have a groove on it. Then the other thing I noticed is I started turning these bearings, this little pickup pin by hand, and one side is really smooth and the other side is rough. In other words, the bearing on this one has worn out. And I don't know if it was ever oiled. I don't know if there's a way to adjust that, but I don't think so. But the bearings are kind of, you can feel kind of rough inside there, the bearings rolling around on the race. So the bearings could have got a little flat spot in it, or they could have just basically worn out. I'm not sure what to think about that, but it doesn't spin as easily as this other one, okay? So here's the deal. If you love braided line, by all means use it. And you might notice here that he didn't put as much braided line on here because he's not expecting to be casting very far. And a lot of guys that use braided line say that by keeping it only about halfway full, it's going to work better. And when you're bass fishing and you're just casting 40 or 50 feet out there, you don't need a lot because you're just dragging them in. And if you're doing fishing in the weeds, you may want braids so that you can drag those big fish through the weeds and not worry about breaking your line. And you can see this is probably 50-pound braid compared to this 10-pound monofilament on here. But the trouble is you're going to wear these out eventually, and if you want to replace it, you're looking at about $45 to replace this with shipping. It's like $38.39 plus another $6 for shipping. So it can be a pretty expensive replacement part. Okay, so I've actually went ahead and ordered a new replacement part because I want to have this in tip-top shape. And I thought about just taking, and I might still do it, and that is sanding these little grooves down very carefully with my Dremel tool so it's not a sharp groove, but it's kind of tapered off there, and then polishing it up. And what I'll do is I'll take this spinner head off and I'll tape over this somehow to keep grit from getting in there, and then I'll go ahead and polish that up and see if that's going to work, and then I'll have a spare. Okay, so that's one issue. So if you don't want that to happen, use monofilament. And I suggest regular monofilament, not necessarily fluorocarbon. Okay, and then make sure you're servicing your reel and changing your line and not letting the line pick up a lot of dirt and mud and stuff like that if you're fishing in dirty water. Change your line on a regular basis and you won't have this problem where it's getting grooves in it. Okay? All right, I'm just going to put that back. Okay, the next issue I want to talk about, and I'm going to see if I can fix this tonight and show you how I fix it. So when I serviced this, I discovered something. And let me show you what it is. It has to do with how tight this handle is. So I've got it working pretty smooth right now. Just a little flick of my finger will spin it a couple times, and that's the way it should be. Here's the one that has less time on it. Okay, it spins pretty freely. But here's what I discovered, and I exchanged several emails with Zebco about this, and they didn't have a really clear answer for me why I was experiencing this problem. But here's the problem. I need to remove this. The problem is the way that the bearings are tightened, and these are ball bearings, and so they don't like, ball bearings work really good rolling around a shaft. They don't work really good because they're not a thrust bearing where you're putting pressure on the side of the bearing. For example, if this was a bearing and I'm putting pressure on the side of this, what happens is the bearings get pushed up against the top race and the bottom race, and they tighten up. They like to roll around on the races and only have a little bit of pressure to hold the top and the outer race and the inner race together. And so if you put too much pressure on there, they start to bind up. And you can feel it kind of rolling around in there, binding up. And so when I took and I put this all back together and I tightened this nut all the way, like so, and it stops right there. Can you hear that? There's too much pressure and the handle doesn't go smoothly. And at first I thought it was the gear lash, but what it ends up being is the bearing, the side bearing pressure. See, just by turning it a quarter of a turn, it takes the pressure off of there and then it runs very smoothly. If I loosen it even a little bit more, it runs even a little bit better. But here's what I discovered about these handles. Unlike the 33 and some other reels where you set the bearing pressure, you don't even really set it. You just put the bearings in and it has a bearing retainer. This one actually has a nut that the bearing is tightened up against, and what happens is this puts a little bit of pressure on the bearing race. All right, so I'm going to work on that and see what we can do. Okay, so here's what I discovered on this handle. I took it apart, but this doesn't bottom out here on this part right here. What Zebco has done is they've used some kind of Loctite, some kind of thread locker to lock this in place. Now you can still unscrew it, but basically it's been locked in place. So I figured that at the manufacturing, when they put these together and adjust them, they put Loctite on there and then thread it in there and lock this in place where this side doesn't move, so that this can bottom out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to basically we're going to take this apart. We're going to put the handle together, and we're going to screw it down until it gets to the place where I want it with the Loctite on there. And then I'm going to leave it and set it aside and keep it in the house where it stays warm, and that will lock this bolt in place, this stud. So we got the handle on there, we got the screw on there. Let's put some thread locker on here. I'm going to go ahead and put it in there. It's a little too loose. Tighten up a little bit more. That's good right there. I'm going to leave it right there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to not fiddle around with this anymore. I like it right there. Has a little bit of play in it, but that's okay. And those bearings aren't grinding anymore. And I like the way that the handle spins very nicely. So I resolved that, and when that dries out, I'll just let it sit overnight and for 48 hours. Should be good. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to replace this piece right there that I do on this, well, the next video on this bullet anyways, and then we're going to replace that spinner cone when my parts come in. And we'll have this reel all back in tip-top shape. Yep, sounds good. All right, thanks. Make sure you give me a big thumbs up. That's really going to help my channel grow. And have a great day and enjoy your next day you go fishing. Bye.